Hello, thanks for coming. Lovely to be here. Thank you for giving us a platform to talk about our work. And I would say actually thank you first to Kate, my client, without whom we wouldn't be here at all to talk about the campaign, because actually it was her creative ambition and I think gut instinct that allowed us to get this campaign to where it is, which we think is a fabulous piece of work. So let's get into it and talk a little bit about the work itself and a little bit about category disruption. So, first up, let's start at the end, the best place to start. And instead of just talking about this work in theory, let's actually look at it. The headline says, "Not your usual banking ad." And to be honest, I think we pretty much explode every single category convention there is with this work. And the campaign is for Mettle, Natwest Mettle, which is the mobile bank for the self-employed. And the campaign is called Power Up What You Do. So let's take a look at the film and we'll just hang out there for a little bit. So hopefully this will work. It's pretty visceral, so watch out for your earbuds.
Simple banking for the self-employed. Power up what you do with Mettle by Natwest.
Powerful stuff. And when you look at the campaign on the page, looking at the other channels, whether it's social or digital or it's outdoor, you can see some pretty strong codes here. I mean, who can ignore a big pink knob? And it doesn't really look like the rest of the category. You know, this is cuts through the sea of sameness, we feel. So we started at the end, and now what we can do is obviously rewind to the beginning and talk about the journey.
Hello. So, how did we get here? This is actually a question that was asked for me by some very nervous banking executives when I demoed that ad to them earlier. As Dave said, just a little context, Mettle, we are a small business banking app. We are owned by Natwest. We're about 5 years old. We've had tremendous growth and great customer loyalty. And my team actually did ask me to mention that we have a great deal on the website right now. So if you are a small business owner, please go check that out. But what is the problem we are trying to solve, really? Why did we do this campaign? Well, I think like many brands, it's awareness. I don't need to tell this audience, of course, how important awareness is, especially for a tiny brand like ours with a very tiny budget as well. When I joined Mettle last year, we had no brand campaigns running. Nothing, zilch. Mettle had done some brand campaigns before in the past, very short versions, but unfortunately they stopped because I think a lot of startups, they put a lot of their budget into acquisition and not brand. So I started to look around and realize this is something we really need to do and get back on the awareness bandwagon. Especially once we did some research this year and we found that our brand awareness had dropped precipitously in the market. So we needed to reverse that slide. We needed a compelling, exciting, recognizable, and I would say always on brand campaign that would fulfill our growth ambitions. But as I began to brainstorm these ideas with Fold and the team, I started to look at all the business banking advertising that I saw on my way to work in the office, whether it was on the tube or on the side of buses or TV at night, and it really was kind of a sea of sameness. Nothing was distinctive. Nothing was standing out. It was a lot of the same messaging, the same tone, addressing the same 2 to 3 key points, and frankly, it felt like they were trying to appeal to everyone and be nothing. So, we need a great brand campaign. We knew that. We have to build our awareness. We need something really distinctive to stand out in this sea of sameness. But what about the audience? One of the most important things when you're thinking about a marketing campaign. So, as I mentioned, we are a business banking app for small business. I would actually even say micro business. We're talking the guy who walks your dog, the gal who does your website design, a gym trainer, the guy who prepares taxes. We are all over the UK, though I will say we skew very much to London. We have a really nice mix of men and women. They're usually in their mid to late 30s, we find. But what's really interesting is they don't think of themselves as business people. They don't even think of themselves as founders in that traditional Silicon Valley sense. But what's especially interesting is the change in attitude we've seen. So when Mettle did research about 3 years ago, it was all about passion. Find your passion, start a side hustle, make that sourdough bread and sell it in the marketplace on the weekend. It was very optimistic. It was very much, oh, I'm going to try this, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, I'm okay. We redid our research just recently, and I cannot say how different it was than the research we did 3 years ago. As we say in New York, kind of the shit got real. Now people were really serious about building a business. They were pragmatic, they were resourceful, they were playing to win. It was grit, it was determination. It was all about belonging to a very special tribe. So that meant Mettle had to change the way we positioned ourselves, and we had to change the way we did all of our advertising. That's why we turned to Fold.
So obviously there's a massive missed opportunity here, and we looked at it and thought, well, why is no one addressing this audience in the way that they see themselves? No one's reflecting this changing landscape. No one's talking, people are still talking, the category is still talking to these people as if they are side hustlers and entrepreneurs and self-starters, and that's a massive missed opportunity. So cutting through, what does that look like? How do you resonate with this audience? Well, there are basically 3 principles. One is, don't do what the rest of the category is doing. Don't fall into those cliches. Don't talk to this audience like that, because that's not who they are. The second one is probably don't waste the space talking about ourselves too much. Let's not take this platform and just talk about the brand. So the third precept is essentially this, which is define the tribe. You know, define these people, diverse as they are, different backgrounds, different businesses, fundamentally are a tribe because they share attitudes, they share passions, they share beliefs. And if you show the tribe themselves, they will see themselves in it. And fundamentally, they will understand who Mettle is for, what Mettle stands for. And going all the way back to through the annals of advertising, you know, tribal thinking in advertising is not new. And if you go back to this guy, Bill Bernbach, who revolutionized advertising in the 60s, as you guys all know, he said this: if you stand for something, you will always find some people for you and against you. If you stand for nothing, you will find nobody against you and nobody for you. And what I find fascinating about this line is it seems to suggest that any powerful communication, any successful communication contains within it polarity, the power to polarize. Now that I find quite fascinating in an industry that's quite obsessed with consensus and pleasing everyone all the time. And coming more up to date, I love this guy. David Grither runs a studio called Death Spray Custom, who make liveries and designs for the motorsport industry. And he puts it like this: you need to make sure people hate it as well as love it. Because if people go, I don't know, you've lost. Now, what a strange thought. You need to make sure that people hate it. So in this line is the same thought fundamentally, which is somehow great communication contains polarity. It drives polarization. Because if you create enough emotion in the audience for people to love it, you will create its equal and opposite feeling, which is rejection and possibly even hatred. Now, let's hang out on this phrase because it's not a comfortable one, and I'm not sure I'm even comfortable with it, but the power of polarization. These are difficult words at a time like this because we live in the most polarized time since perhaps the 1930s, and we know that polarization in culture and politics has led to Trump, and it's led to Brexit, and it's led to Putin upsetting the unipolar order as he sees it. But park that for a minute, because there is something really, really interesting in polarization. And perhaps in our efforts to please everybody all the time, or be acceptable to everybody all the time, we've forgotten what it means to really resonate, to really land with some particular people some of the time. And are we afraid of being too specific or too definitive? Are we afraid of actually standing out? We say we want to stand out, but sometimes that costs our jobs, and it's a big deal. So what about exclusion? What does it mean to polarize? Can we sort of tap into the positive power of polarization if we're a brand or an advertiser? Well, of course, we think you can. Now, what's interesting, if you want to see the positive expression of polarity at work, there's no better place to look than culture, or actually specifically subcultures, which manage to do this thing of building tribes really, really well and creating polarization, but in a positive way. So, what is a tribe? What is a subculture? Fundamentally, it is a modern expression of a tribe. It's a group of people that are united by codes that are around attitude or belief or aesthetic. And a tribe, therefore, attracts other people who have an affinity with those codes, who feel like this is for them. And they will come along, drawn as if by a magnet. But other people, equally, will feel repelled by these same codes. They will feel rejected. But the beautiful thing about a subculture is that it doesn't care, because it's not trying to create something that is accessible for all. And in fact, there's a bit of a joy within any subculture about pissing people off. You know, that's okay. So is there something that brands can learn from this? Well, of course, we wouldn't be standing here if we think they couldn't. But let's take a little bit of a look at sort of archetypal subcultures. Now, there's a whole different talk in the fact that Gen Zs perhaps don't sign up to any particular subculture anymore, and that they're sort of collectors, mixologists of culture. But let's park that for a minute and look at some of the kind of classic subcultures of the last 50 years. And if we're talking about rap and hip-hop and the street art that came out of that, or if we're looking at rave and techno and acid house and I guess what's become EDM, or we're going way back to punk, I can't even remember that, I'm not that old, or we're looking at rock and metal music, what you have in each subculture is a universe, almost a brand universe, with very, very distinct codes of behavior, of belief, of attitude, of aesthetic. And of course, as we said, some people will feel massively drawn to these things. They'll feel like they belong in this tribe. But other people, of course, will feel rejected. And of course, every tribe creates its own enemy. That's just naturally what happens. So what can brands do with this? Can we borrow from subcultures? Can we take some of these codes and use them to our advantage? Can we take the power of polarization and make it work for us? Well, yes. But we're not suggesting that any brand in and of itself is as compelling as a youth movement. Some are. There's a handful on the planet Earth. But all brands, we think, can borrow a little bit from subculture and turn the power of polarity to their advantage. Now, of course, when you're borrowing from culture, you've got to be super, super careful, because that subculture will have certain codes, and those codes need to have an affinity with your own brand and with your own audience. So, I mean, spoiler alert, you know where we got to. So we landed in the kind of subculture of metal and rock, and not just because it's a nice shortcut and a sound-alike for the brand name, not just. It actually goes much deeper than that, because what is our audience about? You know, there's a certain, if you're a self-starter, if you're someone that runs your own business, there's a certain passion. There has to be, otherwise you can't get up every day. There's a certain attitude that comes with that. There's a commitment, because no one's going to do this for you. You have to get up and do it every day. There's an energy that comes with that. There's obviously the sense of no compromise, because you can't, because you will fail. And it's not particularly glamorous. And so naturally, if you're thinking about the codes we can borrow, that's not going to take you to ballroom, right? It's probably not going to take you to country and western. It's going to take you to hard rock and metal, which is where we ended up. Now, what's interesting about that sort of whole subculture is it's not just the fact that it's reflective of certain behaviors and attitudes in the audience, but also that metal as a service is fundamentally an amplifier. What it doesn't do is turn anyone into a CFO overnight. It doesn't replace what they do, but it liberates them to do what they do best. So it's just allowing people to do more of what they're good at. So hence the campaign thought of power up what you do. The amplifier that is metal is also central to the genre that is metal, and it all makes glorious sense. So, a bit of a caveat here is that advertisers and brands are very happy with this world, which is the kind of pantomime end of the genre, of the subculture. It's all very kind of cuddly, and it's theatrical, and it's silly. But, you know, we're not in the business of parodying anything or sending anything up, including the genre and including our audience. Actually, our intent is pretty serious. So, we're here. Now, any of you that know your rock and metal will know what this universe is, but it's fundamentally noughties metal. And it's a very different beast from the thing we were looking at over Leaf. So this is a world of sort of muted tones and grit and passion and sweat. It's quite grounded. I think grunge basically came along and sort of ruined the hair metals guys' sort of game. And so we've got this world, and you know it's like System of a Down, it's Deftones, it's all that stuff, but there's something crucially in this world that speaks to the attitude and the energy of our particular audience, which feels important. Now, when you are quoting Subculture, I suppose it's really important to get the nuance right, because otherwise you descend into pastiche again, and that's a really, really dangerous thing. So the devil is in the detail massively, and every creative decision hugely matters. So for us, this was about, for example, using a guy who directs music videos before, rather than commercials. He's done a few commercials, but he's made a ton of music videos for people like Bring Me the Horizon and Ghost Poet and Blood Honey and Deaf Heaven and lots of very scary bands. And he's got a massive oeuvre in that genre, and he knew what he was doing. And fundamentally, we said to him, make a music video. Almost forget the narrative. Make this as if it was a real piece of culture. And that's what he went ahead and did. And then when we thought about soundtracking this thing, again, the tendency in the industry is to go and find a nice sound house in Soho that will knock you up a sound-alike or something that feels like the real deal. But actually, we soundtracked it with a track from Florence Black, who are an up-and-coming metal band from Wales, and this is their first ever sync, and one hopes that sort of helped their career. Maybe it's not at all, maybe it's blown their career up. We'll find out. But actually, I think because they're still up-and-coming, you get that intensity from the music, which is really interesting. Fundamentally, this is an emotional game. I think the business of being in a tribe or the business of rejecting a tribe is not a rational thing. It's an emotional thing. And all of communications, as we all well know, is fundamentally an emotional thing. In fact, the process was pretty emotional, not in the sense that we cried about anything, but in the sense that when we thought, was something good or not, we would say, yeah, this feels right, which was a very interesting process and quite refreshing. But in the end, we know that. That's how the audience will receive it too. It's an emotional thing, whether you feel like this is for you, whether this is your tribe. Because lots of people, like Daniel Kahneman and people far cleverer than me, have talked about System 1 and System 2. We know that the emotional tail wags the rational dog. And in the end, what do we hope for this campaign? We hope that some people, to quote Bernbach and going back to David Wither, some people love it. But we know that if some people love it, some people will reject it and they will hate it, and that's okay. The worst thing we could get to is that some people go, I don't know. That's what failure looks like to us. So we shall see. And passing back to Kate to chat us through.
Thank you. So we are running this campaign now forever and ever and ever. So it's always on. This is a really key point for us, is that we will never stop doing brand campaigns, because we know that's going to lift our acquisition goals, which are huge, as I said, and ambitious. So we're really excited about this. We love the work that Fold did. And we think it has legs. It absolutely meets all of our needs, and we can take it in so many different ways over the next few years. So really fantastic work. Thank you again for all of that. And so far, we've only been in the market for a few months, but the return and the data has been incredibly positive. So we're really pleased about that too. So so that's us, and I guess happy to take any questions.
Happy to take any questions, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys. Oh, you are going to... Can we get some headphones for these guys? You're not going to be able to hear the questions otherwise, so just give us 2 seconds. Any hands up for questions in the audience?
Hi, thanks so much. I'm really curious to hear how you involved people from the community and in the sort of metal world in your creative process before you got to production, and if you're planning to collaborate with these communities in any other ways in your marketing.
I can answer the first bit, which is in detail, basically. So quite early on, we took the route of sort of not even really sort of triple bidding this, but essentially giving it to this guy that comes from that community. And so he's connected to all the people that are within that world in terms of bands, in terms of stylists, in terms of fans. And that was critical in sort of making sure that this was authentic and sort of came from that place. Now, weirdly, it's entirely coincidental, but the guy that runs the production company used to be in a death metal band. So there was a lot of sort of granular conversation about genres in the meetings that you thankfully didn't have to go to, but there was a lot of genre-specific sort of deathcore talk. But the whole team on the sort of production side was from that world, essentially. And on our side of things, Well, I have a background in music and, like many a teenager, was once obsessed with this genre. But actually the creative team that came up with the idea again are, I suppose, Mettlers, dyed in the wool. So it runs through it like a stick of rock. Now, in terms of what we do going forward, I mean, we've built a world, we sort of borrowed a world, I suppose, but, it feels like a universe, really, that we could continue to do interesting stuff in.
Yeah, we've been playing around with it. So actually, one really nice side effect of this campaign is our employees have gotten super excited because the employees kind of see themselves as this little bit of a radical corner of Natwest, right? So what my team has done is brainstormed all sorts of opportunities off the back of this. I mean, they've just run with it. I've been so proud of them. So for example, one thing we just did was Kiss was playing in London. So we bought some tickets and we put it out on social and we said, hey, win some tickets to Kiss. So things like that is what we're taking advantage of.
We've got another question over here.
Hi, nice to meet you both. Great presentation. So I just had a question around internally, if you had any pushback on that idea, because obviously you went for a subculture, you went to this kind of idea of being polarizing, and how you managed to sell that in, because I guess from a Natwest perspective, they are very mainstream, it's very generalist.
Yes, it was a bit of a conversation, that is true. But we're very lucky because Mettle was created as a sub-brand at Natwest when it was originally formed. So Natwest has a group called Ventures where they actually invest in all sorts of different startups to see what little acorn will turn into an oak tree kind of thing. And so Mettle has been distinctive and separate from Natwest. In fact, we have our own marketing team, unlike the rest of the bank, which has their own marketing team. So we were able to take advantage of that sort of little startup-y culture in a big bank. But, for sure, I had to have a lot of meetings with a lot of people and make sure everybody was comfortable with it. Though I think they're now using Gwen Stefani in their ads too, so I feel like we're all moving towards some rock music. So.
Yeah, it's lovely doing these things at the end when it's all finished. But yeah, on the way, you always have some uncomfortable conversations, of course. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions in the room? We still have a little time left, so if you don't mind, I'll ask the question. So, some of the brands that I really like in the sort of disrupting, polarizing space are people like Oatly and Cereal, the cereal brand, and they love pissing people off and being the kind of polar opposite. But it's quite interesting as businesses like that scale, then they need to move away from polarized to hit the mainstream. So with this creative platform, beautiful, really striking work, I assume it's going to be very successful. But when you need to go mainstream, how does that metal craziness, intensity translate to a wider audience who don't want to be polarized and just want the safe, easy option so they can get on with business?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think Mettle has a very distinct audience. So we are an app for very small businesses, like the self-employed micro businesses. We are never going to be the big mainstream app, right, for 200-person startups kind of thing. So I feel like we're okay with what we've done because we're always going to be after that little kind of subculture, as you said, within the startup world. So I feel like this can grow with us, but hey, if we become super huge and popular, we'll definitely adjust it then. So
yeah, I mean, it's right for right now. I think the fundamental thought that underlies this, as I talked about, was sort of the idea of amplification, sort of powering up, and that can be creatively expressed in lots of different ways. It might be this way, but it might be through the medium of, say, gaming, for example. So the idea of sort of like powering up small businesses to do what they do best, I think sort of will carry us for many, many years. But this expression, we hope, given what Kate's just said, will stand us in good stead for a while.
Any other questions?
Hi, my name's Paige. I was just wondering, you said that it's predominantly the audiences in London at the moment. How are you currently using data to see how this sort of messaging resonates regionally across the UK? Because the cultures are quite different, north, south, and London centric.
Yeah, we're running it across the UK, but a lot of our customers sort of congregate in London, but we are running it across the UK because our customers are throughout the UK. And so we're doing data through Fold, through our media campaign managers, which is Wavemaker actually, so they help us come through with reports and we check How's it working? What's the feedback? Is it resonating? You know, all the usual metrics that one would do for a brand campaign. And so far, so good. We've had really positive results, a lot of great comments on social media. People really love the band. They're always asking what the name of the band is. So far, so good.
So the work's really striking, and that's all the signed off stuff. And it was signed off by the larger organisation. So what did you not do creatively that was pitched? What was too much? What was like, oh, I wish we'd got that away?
Nothing. And I would say actually what happened is that we started somewhere that felt a little bit more at the sort of theatrical end of things. It was a little bit more pantomime. So it's that first slide of not this. And this is before I think you even saw it. And we were sort of going, yeah, but it just feels so familiar and it's so safe, and actually we're missing a trick because there's so much within this sort of universe, the subculture universe, that isn't that. But that's the thing we all point towards because it's almost like a meme in itself. So actually, if anything, we sort of pushed the work a fair bit before we got to even running Kate through it. But with her involvement, and actually as we built the team sort of around Thomas James, if anything, we just sort of dug ourselves deeper and deeper into this world. I don't think we backed out at any point. I mean, obviously we weren't ever going to bite the heads off bats, but that's not this world anyway. They stopped doing that in the noughties.
Any other questions from the room? So, time for one more question. Who do you both want to meet here today at MadFest? Which partners, which creatives, which people, which technologies are you looking for to make this even bigger and better next year?
I'd just like to meet Rory Sutherland because he's such a brilliant mind. I saw him wandering around over there and just like to say hello. That would do me. I'd
Rory,
be happy
if you're
man.
in the audience, come forward.
I'd die happy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan as well. That would be amazing.
We'll both go
actually.
and mock Rory. That would be happy people.
Look, guys, thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Round of applause for everyone.
Thank you very much.